And we are live, everybody, with that Combatcast, a man they call Dave and Chevarooney. We're going to talk some combat sports, a little fight main event this weekend, Her Manson versus Strickland. But before we do that, how about a countdown video? Are you a fan of pro wrestling, comedy, and combat sports? Then we have the podcast for you because we cover that and much, much more.
Do you like to debate with your friends? Do we have the perfect segment for you? It's the 531, where we take any given subject, break it down to a top 5. From there, we debate it down to 3, and then into that number 1 spot.
If you want to get a hold of us, find us on our social medias. Search Working Fans Podcast on any major social media platform. And if you want to find the podcast, search for us on any major podcast platform, as well as YouTube.
Working Fans Podcast. We put in the work so you don't have to.
All right. So before we get into today's topic, Chevy, what do we got coming up?
We got on the February 12th, UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. So everyone get hyped. We're finally going to get a big card again. So the week after, on the 19th, we're going to be previewing UFC Fight Night Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. That's going to be some Rafael on Rafael violence. And then at the end of the month, on the 26th, we're going to be previewing UFC Fight Night Dariush versus Makhachev.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. All right. Now, I thought this weekend's card I wasn't overly impressed about. I talked to you, so I thought, which it kind of makes me sad because this is UFC Fight Night 200.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. They care about their pay-per-views still. But like as far as their fight nights go, they're like, yeah, this is what you get.
They just, be happy you're getting a fight. That's what they.
Yeah, they try to give us a decent main event, and then the rest it is what it is. You hope that stylistically you get some good fights, and yeah, I think it's when I hear the thing with WWE, it's the same thing like with Peacock. They have their streaming service with ESPN. They're paid already. They're making X amount, so it's not as like there's this urgency to push a lot of this stuff, which is another topic entirely we didn't even really talk about beforehand. But I mean, I think that's kind of apparent. I mean,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely they're still, I think, trying to push the main events on the, and the pay-per-views, but the cards definitely suffer.
Right. Well, name value for sure. The great thing about MMA is two people that have no names at all could put on fight of the year, and It happens every week. There's fights that nobody's watching that are amazing. So just because, we don't know the fighters doesn't mean it won't be a great fight. So that's why I like to watch, as early as I can on the prelims all the way to the end.
I think I heard Luke Thomas say this one time too. If you're into just the major storyline guys and you just fall on like a hype train or something like that, like you're probably not going to last. You have to be invested a little bit more if you want to be a longtime fan.
Right. I think you'd be better off with like a pro wrestling if that's like your main goal, because you're going to get those great stories and personalities all the time. So, yeah, I agree with him. If you're a fan of the actual sport, you're going to find value in every fight. Maybe not every fight, but, the early fights where you don't know people, that's where, you can see stars before they're made. So if you want to be a hipster, say, I knew them before they were a star.
I will say this, though, as a pro wrestling fan, this is a personal opinion, though, I think that there is something special about when there's a truly good story, a good grudge match in MMA. And I don't think it gets any better because pro wrestling, you might be able to tell this great story and stuff, but in MMA, UFC, you legitimately a lot of times like you don't know the ending, and it's real, it's authentic, especially when it's authentic. I mean, the guys have and the girls have learned after a while. Hey, we might be able to like talk shit and get some money. And that's not just wrestling. Floyd Mayweather, Muhammad Ali, everybody's been doing that for years.
That's right.
But yeah, to me, there's nothing better when MMA and UFC do it. And I would say for the people who do like those storylines, stuff like that, find some other stuff you like too. But that's the beauty of MMA, UFC. You don't have to watch every card. It's not a storyline driven business. So when you find that thing, you know, it's good. It's about as good as it gets, I think.
That's
personally. So let's talk about some topics before we get into this main event. I think we'll close with that. One of the things you had brought up to me before we got on that Henry Cejudo is in the testing pool. Chael Sonnen recently broke this story. He said he recently talked to Henry, and Henry said that he's back in the training pool, training twice a day, and that he wants Volkanovski. To which Sonnen had told Cejudo, I know you want Volkanovski, but Volkanovski's already got an opponent, and it's not you. So are you willing to get in there and take another contenders? And he said, I couldn't get an answer. We know Henry wants to probably skip the line. Dana has made comments that, you know, something along the effects that, you know, we're not going to let him just come in here, skip the line. Which is, you know, exactly what we did with GSP. I'm gonna let you talk about this, but first, I'll just say this. This is what I think where Dana's coming from. And it's not necessarily fair, but it's not fair. It's never been fair. So, but I think the thing with Cejudo is he, like we just talked about, he doesn't have that name value that a GSP does. Dana didn't like doing that with GSP, who had a name, and then GSP took the belt and he went home. Dana hates that shit. I think he'd prefer that everybody just lose the title and then move on so we can build another star. With Cejudo, you're not even going to get that giant GSP-like payday that he would with a GSP. So he's not bringing anything to the table other than pure athleticism and just skill and an Olympic pedigree. And us hardcore fans really would love to see, because we know that that's an exciting fight. Your thoughts, and maybe who do you think would be a contender he might face? I'll throw you a little curveball to get this fight. You know, what do you think?
Well, so as far as Dana and Henry going back and forth, I'm with everyone on this, by the way. I can't explain this, but we picture GSP, you know, as arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time. Well, Cejudo, you know, he calls himself the greatest combat athlete of all time, which, you know, his accolades prove or show that, you know, he has an argument for that. But for some reason, whether it's because of the weight classes that he's competed in or his cringy, like terrible buildups to promote fights or whatever, he doesn't really get that respect from fans or from Dana. Like you said, he's not really the big name that he thinks he is, or he should be, and arguably he should be. But Dana runs a business. It's all about making money. Like you said, that fight does not warrant. It's not going to make enough money to warrant him jumping the line, especially because GSP did jump the line. He beat Bisping and then he pieced out. They don't want Henry to do that. Henry has only talked about becoming the triple champ, not coming in and dominating the division for years to come or anything like that. So I don't think he's going to get that fight. Obviously, Volkanovski has a fight booked. I think that Cejudo should face like a Giga, maybe one more before title fight.
I'm looking at him now. I have a little unfair advantage. I'm looking at the rankings now, and it's funny.
Give me the top 5. Who's the top 5?
Yeah, Ego's the name I was looking at because I was trying to think of guys size-wise he matches up with. Like Bryce Mitchell was like the next guy, and it's like
I think has a fight lined up as well.
Also, those guys are number 9 and number 11. This is the top 5 if he wants to beat one of the top 5. Let's start off. Max Holloway.
He doesn't want that fight. That's a bad matchup.
Yeah, maybe Yair is a better matchup, but I don't like it either.
That's not a bad matchup for Cejudo. He's good with that, karate style,
right?
But Yair fights long with his legs, and Cejudo's not going to finish him. So unless he submits him, so that's a tough matchup as well.
After that, the last 2 we got is Korean Zombie and Calvin Kattar. I think durable, bigger guys. They're going to bully him.
Yeah. I really think Volkanovski is his best matchup wise, just because they're, similar heights. Everyone in that division is tall, like 5'11", 5'10", tall. I just don't see Henry being able to deal with that. I mean, his wrestling obviously is phenomenal. So if he can get inside, he can take guys down, but he's not going to have that same strength that he does at, flyweight or bantamweight.
He's not a big bantamweight.
Right.
He's a guy that could fight at flyweight, and he probably walked around at bantamweight. So that's fine. But there's bigger bantamweights than him. And now you're talking about going up one other weight class, and that's where it's like, oh.
Right. I speaking of opponents for him, I'd like to see him fight Corey Sandhagen at bantamweight. Let's see how he does with that. I don't even think he could beat Corey, to be honest with you. I think, the way Corey uses his length and everything. But
and I know people might give us a hard time about this, but I think we're going to agree on this. I don't think he beats TJ at bantamweight. That's a better matchup, maybe size-wise. But it's not the same when you fought this kid at
especially being off for, however long he's been off. I know he has that mentality, obviously that winner's Olympic mentality, but
that's the X factor too. I mean, to his credit, that is the X factor. He is a former Olympic gold medalist, and he's won championships in 2 weight classes. And particularly the flyweight one is interesting because he got outclassed originally by Mighty Mouse. And whether you thought he won the second fight or not, it was extremely competitive. And to make that kind of jump and comeback, it's spectacular. And honestly, if he hadn't lost that fight, obviously they're never going to do a third one now anyway, it probably looks like. But it would have warranted a third match. Like, he was that good. And that mentality that he has, that's something special.
Yeah, he has a toughness that can't be taught. So
I will say this though, you can also look at it another way too. I don't, but you can. Arguably beat Mighty Mouse. Then he fought TJ at flyweight. But TJ was completely
a ghost of himself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, ghost of himself. And then he won the title from Marlon Moraes when it was vacated. And Marlon ended up being, Marlon is good, but he ended up not being the guy that we thought he was at bantamweight.
And Marlon hurt Cejudo too.
Yeah.
He just got tired, and Cejudo used his mentality, his toughness, his Olympic, winning mentality to just push through that. And he saw that Marlon was tired. He knows that he's a quitter, and he broke him, and he ended up winning. So
yeah, that mentality is good, and it will get you so far. But does it get you by Sandhagen? Does it get you by Dillashaw at bantamweight? Does it get you by Aljamain? Does it get you by Yan? Those are the questions we probably need to ask and want to ask. But to Cejudo's credit, I get it. He's conquered both these belts. He's trying to put himself in the position for the biggest money pay fights and make himself look as marketable. He can say, I won these 3 titles, but he's doing what he can. But unfortunately, you don't really draw the money, and they don't necessarily want to help you.
Yeah, they don't want to play ball. Exactly.
In fact, this is actually a good segue. they don't want you getting that big. Because we were just talking about this. There's another interesting topic, I thought. Eddie Hearn, boxing promoter, talked about Conor McGregor. And one of the things he talked about was the UFC mentality, basically, that they don't want people to get too big. And he talked about they did a really good job of in MMA of building up what a UFC contract means, how special it is. You have people fighting in Bellator, and oh man, like I'd love to get that UFC contract. And it's special. It's a big deal. They are the brand, and the brand is the biggest thing. But like Eddie was saying, with Conor, it's probably a headache for them because he got bigger than the brand. And although they made money, this is probably not. It's probably not a great situation for them. They don't really probably typically enjoy this. And I think this has a lot of merit. I think we both agree that at the end of the day, and we didn't plan this, but talking about the Cejudo thing, I just think it's a great example. Like they're not trying to get you bigger than the UFC. You can be here, and if you do more, great, and we'll take it. But
I think personally, this has a lot to do with what's happening to Francis right now. I think they don't want to pay Francis. They want to, shut him down, prove he's not bigger than the UFC. That they would not, that the UFC will continue to go on without Francis, and Francis may not do well outside the UFC, which I don't think is right. But I do think that Conor becoming bigger than the UFC has hurt a lot of the other fighters just in the fact that they don't ever want that to happen again.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. And producer Joe in the comments there talking about he missing AJ. I don't know.
We all do. We all do.
Tell us where he is. I don't know. But yeah, man, I will say I think there's a lot of merit to this, and this is again talking about a little pro wrestling because pro wrestling's the kissing cousin of combat sports here. I think this has been talked about in WWE before, where guys like Stone Cold, Rock, Hulk Hogan, yeah, you made money. It's great. We love it at the time. But we can't really tell you what to do, can we? Because now you're bigger than us. And I think this is a problem guys like Vince McMahon and Dana White run into as the promoter, where they've built up their brand as the big thing, and it works. But the problem is you're trying to promote stars. You want stars. And I think as a fan, it kind of sucks because we're not getting the biggest possible stars sometimes. Right.
It's a delicate balance that the UFC needs to strike. And they're excellent business people in that office. They let Conor get away a little bit. I mean, they made their money off it, but I don't see them letting that happen ever again.
No.
Not while Dana White is in charge anyway. If we get a different promoter, you might see something different. But while we have Dana, no star is going to get bigger than the UFC again.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. In fact, let's continue to segue here. We'll take a couple fighters. They're no longer in the UFC. And one of them being Megan Anderson. And I'm going to write, this was an Instagram post she put up yesterday. For those asking and continuing to ask me daily, I have no plans to fight right now. I'm not saying that I will never fight again, but at this point in my life, I'm loving everything else I'm doing. From gaming and streaming, working as an analyst for ESPN and Invicta, and currently filming my first major feature film. I couldn't be happier, and fighting really isn't on my mind. I'm currently not affiliated with any gym and not signed to any promotion right now, and I haven't been pursuing a new fight contract. I appreciate the love and interest from everyone, hoping to see me in the cage again, and hopefully this answers your questions for now. Personally, I thought this was just awesome. It's great for somebody who, she has other options, and she's not tied down, and, she's not going to just get in the cage. And she's in an unfortunate predicament because, again, talking about star power and stuff like that, she was in a weight class that didn't really have stars. You had Cyborg, Amanda Nunes, who jumped up, and that was really about it. Bigger weight classes for women has never been a priority. It is in fairness. Women and MMA is still very new. MMA is still new in the big picture. So women MMA is even newer. But again, maybe I wonder if we could have found more opponents, if we could have out there. And I get maybe you don't want to put on any old fight, but maybe I wish. I feel like they could do more with these divisions, and then maybe you would have stars, and Megan Anderson could be a star. She's clearly smart. She's got a look, and she's got a personality, and I think she's skilled, but she had to get rushed to the top, and she got into fights she wasn't ready to fight.
Right. Well, apart from the UFC not promoting or building the division, I think as a fighter, once you have that doubt in your mind that you may not want to continue, it's a good time to jump out. If she has other options, she should absolutely pursue those other options. You don't want to get punched in the face, then don't go in there and get punched in the face.
Good for her.
If you're a fighter, pursuing the belt is your goal. It needs to be, your only vision, the only thing you see and think about, I would imagine, and as soon as you start to falter on that a little bit, I think it's time to probably jump out. And seems like that's what she's doing. If she decides she changes her mind and she can't live without it, I'm sure she's going to find a spot on a promotion, probably gets her pick. So if she's, going to be safe at home streaming video games and talking on the TV and getting paid, as much or near or more, maybe, I can't fault her for doing that.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, that's just what we're all saying is good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Also, some news is coming in too. Scott from Volante just sent us this in the group. Ian, I always struggle with his name. Kudabella.
Oh, Kudalabra?
Kudalabra, yeah. He's taking on Ryan Spann, Fight Night 202.
Okay.
So,
that's a good matchup.
Nope. That is now off. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Never mind. What we missed you. What you could have been. All right. In fact, actually, I'll look up why that is off. But in other news too, Jeremy Stevens just signed with the PFL recently. Another fighter that he's had a lot of fights. To me, I think if you're a fighter like Stevens is right now, and a lot of these guys, the PFL is such a great thing that's out there for them because you can bet on yourself and you can potentially become, win $1 million.
Right.
And like Jeremy Stevens was not going to get $1 million in the UFC, and it's interesting because the PFL is not bigger than the UFC. It's probably never going to be, but I hope it does well because it creates a nice niche for a lot of these fighters to possibly make a ton of money and be successful. A guy like Stevens to get this opportunity at this point in his career, and I don't know, the PFL does have good talent, so it's not a layup. This guy's going to win a title by any, win $1 million by any stretch. But I love the fact that he has this opportunity, and I do wonder sometimes this guy's contracts come up, guys that are in maybe he still has a contract with him, but a guy like Henry Cejudo, I would be going down there and trying to win $1 million all the time.
Right. Yeah. The UFC, they're going to continue to let people go like this. I believe Stevens lost 6 fights in a row or something like that. He's been around forever. He probably was at the upper end of the pay scale. It was probably the right business decision to let him go. And with Dana White's Contender Series or whatever, they're signing new fighters all the time. They already have 500 plus fighters on the roster. I think you're going to continue to see more fighters of Jeremy's ilk being released, and it's good that they can find another promotion to go to and fight. Khabib just started his Eagle FC. We missed the boat on that one. Unfortunately, we'll have to catch the next one. But PFL, I think, is the most readily available or most accessible MMA promotion. You just have to have ESPN. It's on ESPN. So,
Right.
they do a lot of, they have a, speaking in American sports, they have a season and points and all this that is approachable for someone coming from a different American sport, So I think they're useful for all of MMA. And it's good to see that they do get some high level talent. Do I think Stevens is going to go there and win the $1 million? No, I don't think he is. I think he's going to get beat by someone we've never heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just at that point in his career. And also, the PFL does have talent. They just aren't as good at building stars as the UFC is. Nobody is. So
they don't have the name value.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll get there. They're a newer promotion, but I mean, maybe not. The UFC might be the end-all be-all of all MMA promotions, but
I do want to talk about one more topic before we talk about this weekend's main event. But when you talked about the losses Jeremy Stevens pointed up in this week's fight card, I do want to point out one of the great mysteries in MMA to me, Sam Alvey, who I got a kick out of. I'm just
Smiling Sam.
Looking at his record here, he has lost. Here's the thing. He has one draw sandwich in here. He lost 4 in a row. He got a draw, and then he lost 2 in a row. So he has not won a fight since 2018.
All right.
John Volante.
Let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
First of all, John Volante, he's garbage. So that even shouldn't even count. But anyway, Sam jumped some weight classes, right? So he went from middleweight to light heavyweight. So a bunch of his losses were at light heavyweight, right? And he went back down to middleweight and had more losses, I think.
Yeah. He had a catchweight fight here, a light heavyweight debut that he actually won. And then I think he's been fighting at light heavyweight, it looks like, for a little while. Those were the losses in the draw. He returned to middleweight a couple fights ago, and he got choked out, and then he just had a split decision loss.
Right.
Look, I'm not telling you, he could maybe pick some better fights and do a better job, but at the end of the day, goddamn, we don't normally keep people after 3 losses in a row. This is incredible.
Well, Sam, if you've noticed his fights, he is of that cowboy mentality and will take the short notice fights and jump in and save cards for the UFC.
Right.
And he doesn't guarantee he does not make as much money as Jeremy Stevens was making.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll do short notice fights. You need people like that in the organization. He's a fun guy. Even when he loses, he's entertaining. He usually gets finished if he loses. So, that adds excitement to the card. So if you're not paying him that much money, it's good to have someone like that on the UFC or on the roster for the UFC. So
I got to
now, if he loses this fight,
imagine it's over.
Yeah. He's gotten his grace period after his acceptable amount of losses. So if he loses this one, this isn't a short notice fight. So
probably
they're going to send him packing. Yeah,
they probably told him you're gonna have to have a camp, and if you lose this, you're done.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to this final, the main event for this weekend's card, it was announced Alexander Guffinson returning at heavyweight against Ben Rothwell. Gustafson, a guy I've always enjoyed. Excuse me. He's had these wars with Daniel Cormier and John Jones early on that were just tremendous. And he's never quite. It's unfortunate. He was so close. He split decisions losses that he arguably could have won, and against 2 of the greatest of all time. And he never quite got there. And he's had other performances where he fought at heavyweight before against Radum, and he got caught early in a choke, which can happen.
Arguably one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Yeah.
Yes.
That's your debut. That's a tough debut.
Right. And he's been caught by Rumble Johnson, and
that was a headbutt.
There was a headbutt in that, and there was also his fight with Jones where he came back where things didn't work out as well. That's John Jones. So he took a lot of time off. That's the thing that concerns me, I guess, with this is that, he's just not as active. But he's a guy to me that if he doesn't get caught, he can beat a guy like Rothwell. He's got a name. Like, he's a guy that could be exciting for this heavyweight division. I want him to do well. He could, put fresh air. Like Alexander Gustafsson, if he could be at the way he fought at light heavyweight at his peak at heavyweight, which I know might be asking a lot, but if he could, and God, you had Francis Ngannou like under contract still. That's an interesting fight, Like seeing that form of Alexander Gustafsson at heavyweight with the range to be able to keep his distance, able to maybe throw a takedown or two, like that could be an exciting fight. It's by all means, it's fantasy right now. We have to see if Alex can look that good at heavyweight. But man, I just wish this guy had nothing but success because to me, like he was so on the brink of that next level.
Right. You remember what he did to our current light heavyweight champion, Glover Teixeira, when he hit him with those 3 consecutive uppercuts. I mean, his boxing is, top level in MMA. And if he can gain a little bit more power moving up to heavyweight, but keep his movement because he has good footwork too. If he can keep that speed and put on a few more pounds, a little bit more power, his takedown defense is good. He can perform takedowns himself if he needs to change levels and mix up the fight. But I think he could be a problem at heavyweight. He just needs to find some consistency. That's all. And stay healthy, all the things he struggled with. He has been unlucky, as you say, though. If he was, Brennan Schaub has said this before, I believe, but if he was in any other era where he wasn't with DC and John Jones, we're all calling him the greatest light heavyweight of all time, So
yeah,
unlucky guy. I wish him nothing but the best. He is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I love Gus. I hope he can do this. I think Rothwell is a tough matchup for him, though. He's just the toughest guy, Rothwell. He's durable. He's powerful.
He's okay on the ground.
He's very good on the ground.
Yeah.
So I just think it's again for Gustafsson. I don't know on his team who is like, yeah, this is a good matchup for us, but he only fights killers. So
yeah,
I think it's a tough matchup. I do hope he wins. I like Rothwell as well, but I do want to see Gus, like you said, maybe make the heavyweight division his new home and become a big name and a star in the division.
35 years old. It's the time is now if he can.
Heavyweight, yeah, that's your prime at heavyweight. So
right. Well, he's had time. Some people are good with the time off. I hope he is.
Hope so.
All right, let's get into this main event this weekend: Strickland versus Her Manson. Her Manson. He has had some interesting fights. He just beat Edmund Sebastian, who was a big prospect.
He's been on a bit of a slide lately, though, right?
Yeah, he lost to Marvin before that. He beat Gaston before that. He lost to Jared Cannonier before that. But then he beat Alligator Man, Souza, Brent. So he was on a tear, but he lost a couple here and there.
Strickland has won 4 in a row, right? He took some time off, and then he came back, and he's won his last 4 in a row, I think.
Yeah, Strickland has actually won 5 in a row.
5.
And there was 2 finishes, but then the decisions were Jotko, Uriah Hall, and Jack Marshman. So all tough guys to finish.
Right, that Uriah Hall win is a big win for him because Uriah was on a streak as well.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I think these are 2, really good contenders. Like, I think that the winner of this could be near a middleweight championship match. I do think you got guys like Jared Cannonier before them, Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
But I think these guys are definitely in the discussion. It's funny. Yeah, Strickland's more on a tear, but Her Manson, I think, very good on the ground. And I think he presents some potential problems if he can get Strickland on the ground. But I don't know about that.
Right. He's good everywhere. So we love Uriah Hall, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But Strickland knew what he was getting when he gets into a fight with Uriah Hall. He's going to get, a stand-up fight. And all he did was, pressure him, put more volume out than Uriah, and he ended up beating him in a decision. Hermansson's a little bit different. He's better, he's well-rounded. And so Strickland has to be prepared for takedowns and for a stand-up war if Jack wants to keep it there. So just having to worry about that extra little bit, I think makes a big difference. I'm pretty sure that Strickland is the favorite in this fight, although it might be like a slight favorite or whatever.
They're next to each other in the rankings. Hermansson actually outranks him. He's 6 and Strickland is 7.
But Strickland was low and has rocketed up recently. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go with Hermansson. Mm-hmm. I can't really tell you why. I think just because he's so well rounded, mm-hmm. and I think he's usually pretty composed.
He is. He's mentally strong.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with him. Maybe catches him late with a submission or something.
I'm not going to argue this. I was actually leaning towards Manson too. It's interesting because I think Strickland is the potential bigger star.
Yeah,
I think he's more comfortable on the mic, and but I think Hermansson is just a more well-rounded fighter, and that's the thing in MMA. Just because you can talk doesn't mean you can necessarily win the fight. Although Strickland's a good fighter, I'm not taking anything from it. I just think Hermansson is. I like this matchup.
Yeah, I think he's going to be good to weather the pressure that Strickland is going to bring to him.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this top 5. Whitaker's obviously facing Adesanya next. Then we got Marvin. You got Jared Cannonier, Derek Brunson, and Paul Acosta.
Acosta has to go up to light heavyweight per Dana.
Oh, okay. So he might
because remember he refused to cut weight against Vittori.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, also Adesanya has. Obviously he beat Brunson too, but that was a different Brunson. I think.
Yeah, that was before Blonde Brunson. Blonde Brunson's bringing a different energy for sure. He's been on a tear.
Whitaker beat an early in his career Brunson too, but Blonde Brunson appears to be unstoppable. So I
shaped like Crash Bandicoot.
I think he actually kind of reminds me of Wesley Snipes from I think it's the
Demolition Man.
Demolition Man,
yeah.
Absolutely. I think him or Jared Cannonier has had to be next in line for whoever wins the upcoming Adesanya Whitaker fight.
Yeah, I think maybe the winner of this Strickland Hermansson fight maybe fights
the guy who's not getting the title shot. Maybe.
Yeah, or like a Kelvin Gastelum, maybe.
Well, I mean,
like that.
A lot of it depends too on what happens with Adesanya.
Oh yeah,
right.
That could be an immediate rematch.
Right. Yeah. If Whitaker wins, I think we're getting a trilogy. If Adesanya wins, then assuming he wants to fight again, I don't know. Maybe I'd go Jared Cannonier over Brunson. Maybe it's hard to say. And the winner, like I said, of this fight would probably face whoever's not getting the title shot. But if Whitaker is fighting, then actually I could see the winner of this fight in Marvin too. And then you could do Cannonier versus Brunson and have kind of like a, top contenders go at it. Which is always fun.
Think if Adesanya wins, I think you're going to see Brunson next. They have a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
Brunson's been calling him out since, he's started this run. He looks like a completely different fighter, so you can kind of build the fight. I would imagine Brunson probably gets the fight.
Do you see Hermansson has said that he thinks he's a problem for Adesanya stylistically?
Everyone says that.
Yeah, they do. That's what I say. Do you agree? Ideally, but I don't. The only one who's really taken him down was Chan at light heavyweight.
Right. No one has been able to institute their game plan. So until I see someone actually, all these people could do this, could do that, but no one ever seems to be able to do it. We'll see. Whitaker, I imagine, is going to fight this fight much smarter than he did the last one. I bet you see him go for a lot of takedowns, and kicking Izzy's legs a lot. If he can do that and actually do it and get a win that way, I think you're going to see other people not quite as afraid of Izzy, and there's a blueprint to beat him. Not that they'd be able to implement the same game plan that someone the skill level of Whitaker could do, but I think there'll be a blueprint if he could accomplish that.
I agree. I think Whitaker is an interesting. I mean, I know we're going to talk about this next week, but he's an interesting fighter in the sense that it's hard to tell right now with the pandemic. But that's the one thing about MMA. Like Whitaker is a star in Australia. So, you try to book fight cards, stuff like that. So, like, yeah, he might not have that pay-per-view quality, but like they can fill out an arena in Australia and they can get a big box office down there. Whitaker's happy with that. And he's also a really smart fighter. He doesn't really get into people's games too often. And he learned from his mistakes.
Right. That was the big surprise in the last one, is he just got into a firefight with Izzy, which, he said that Izzy got into his head and, he was bothered by it. And that's, just got caught up in the moment. So I expect him to be much smarter in this fight and pose much more of a problem for Adesanya.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm looking forward to that fight, but we'll talk about that next week. I'd ask you what's coming up, but I think we just said it. So
that's right. So next week we're going to talk about UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. And then on the 19th, we're going to do the UFC Fight Night, Rafael versus Rafael, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. At the end of the month, on the 26th, it's going to be UFC Fight Night, Dariush versus Makhachev.
All right, folks. And until then, keep listening to Combatcast, and we'll see you at the fights.